JJ Peterka, will he be signed? Will he be traded? Will he be back with the Buffalo Sabres? We'll look back on his year and look ahead. Coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, what's up, everybody, and welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere you listen to your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Odyssey app. You could also watch us on our YouTube channel, where you can be sure to check us out there, like and subscribe to the show if you like watching. And if you would like to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club, you could do that by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and that is the place where you can sign up. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, we're going to be talking some JJ Peterka on today's show. There have been some rumors about him in the past that didn't end up happening, but now he's going into a contract negotiation with the Sabres, and a very interesting player to look back on and look ahead for. Tonight is also a big night for the teams surrounding the Buffalo Sabres, the other Pagula-owned teams locally. You've got the Bandits starting game one against Saskatchewan in the NLL Finals. The Bandits looking for a three-peat. They are the favorites in that series. Game one and game three would be in Buffalo in a potential three-game series. I think, especially in a league like that, NLL, if this is what they're doing in the AHL right now for different reasons, I think, but give games 2 and 3 in a best-of-3 series to the higher seed. Give the team, competitive advantage, sure, but really even that's not really a big point here. Give the team that's earned home field the right to win the championship on home field. That if you win it, no matter where you win it, it will be at home. Especially for Buffalo, because Buffalo obviously fills that place up, and it'll be a packed house this weekend at KeyBank Center for the greatest show at that arena going right now. It is the Bandits. And then the Amerks tonight, we'll talk a little bit more about them in the third segment of today's show, looking back on game one. They fall 5-4 to Laval, what happened in that game, and looking ahead to game two, which is tonight in Rochester, before they head to Laval for games 3, 4, and potentially 5 if needed. So down to 1-0 in that series. And of course, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's Toronto. They are doing the Leafs thing, but they always do. And Marner, who is someone we will do more shows about as free agency approaches, according to Chris Johnston, Sportsnet, he believes that right now it's leaning towards Marner is going to want a fresh start on a new team this offseason. He was putrid in Game 5. Horrible. Spinorama turnover in the neutral zone that he also didn't make up for in his own end when the Panthers came down at a 2-on-2. He had a pretty soft play earlier in the game that cost a goal. Marner has been tough on a few plays in this series. More and more reason why I think it's getting ugly, and maybe he gets, he gets tossed out of there. He might just, I'm done here. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's so frustrating. And we'll see what ends up happening with Mitch Marner. So let's get to our main topic of today's show, JJ Peterka. As we go through the Sabres roster with our exit interview series, now let's look at Peterka, the season he just had, and what is ahead for a player that does need a contract. Peterka, at still a very young age, only 23 years old, will be a restricted free agent after finishing up the third year of his NHL career. Now, a couple of things to get to on Peterka. One, the stats. Very different looking stat sheet for Peterka this past year in 2024-25 from the year prior. 23-24. Big breakout year for Peterka. 28 goals, got hot down the stretch. Only 22 assists. He wasn't quite the playmaker that he was this past year. Last year, he shoots the puck a lot less. And that, to me, was notable. I think Don Granato instilled in Peterka in his second full season. Hey, you got a great shot. You know what? Shoot from everywhere. Everywhere you get it, take your shots. And it, to some degree, worked. 226 shots on goal. That's a lot. In fact, I believe Thompson, although Thompson didn't play the full season, so actually I bet you he didn't top him. Thompson and Dahlin were the only two players that topped Peterka, and minutes-wise per game, they both played more. So he was close, but only, not only, but a 12% shooting percentage. That's pretty good for Peterka, and he ends up with 28 goals. But not quite yet a well-rounded, all-around offensive game, and certainly not a great defensive game. This past year, after it became pretty clear that one annoying thing for me with Peterka was at some point he became too predictable, that you just knew as a defenseman, it was easy to defend him because you knew he's going to skate in with speed. He's going to go stick handle, stick handle, stick handle. He's going to toe drag your shot to get closer to the middle of the feet to change his angle. And he's going to rip it on goal. He's not going to look to see if there's a teammate open. He's not going to try to drive to a different area of the ice to take a shot himself. He's not going to try to go hard to the net and create a goal that way. He was always trying to score in the exact same way. And to his credit, he did do that 28 times. But I thought it became an easy play to defend. If you're the defenseman and you watch any sort of film on JJ Peterka, any bit of research, you know, oh, I just stay in front of him and I'll move my stick when I'm poke checking to the middle of his feet instead of to the outside of his lead foot, and I'll deflect the puck away. And that's what happened all the time for him at the end of that 23-24 season, at the beginning of the 24-25 season. He dials it back. Roughly 60 fewer shots this past season compared to the year prior. Almost a shot per game less for JJ Peterka. So while he scored one fewer goal, 27 goals, he was a more efficient shooter with a 15.6% shooting percentage. It went up 3 percentage points. And along with that, he became a better playmaker. 41 assists, almost doubled his previous total of 22. And I think Peterka went from a sniper and a goal scorer to just a great offensive player. All around great offensive player. The vision was there. Now, keep in mind, all this is when talking about 5-on-5. We got to get to him as a power play player. But at 5-on-5, this is one of the better offensive players in the sport. And the numbers reflect that. If you look at the amount of goals your team scores for every hour you're on the ice, a full game, 60 minutes of ice time, for every 60 minutes of ice time that you're on the ice, there was nobody in the NHL this year that played more than 55 games whose team averaged more goals per game when that person was on the ice than JJ Peterka. When JJ Peterka was on the ice for every 60 minutes of gameplay, so a full game was worth 3.93. Almost, and that's just at 5-on-5, no power play. Almost 4 goals per game. Nobody, again, that played more than 55 games had more than that. Nikita Kucherov, one of those that was just a smidge behind. Kucherov, when he's on the ice, the Lightning score 3.89 goals per game. This isn't even expected goals. This is straight up, how many goals did you score divided by 60 minutes of ice time? You are getting an efficient JJ Peterka. Goals above replacement, 96th percentile, all that stuff looks great for him. The one area that he still doesn't give you is a defensive game. He is, all these guys I'm looking at when, they average a lot of goals, a lot of high event hockey when they're on the ice. Kucherov, for instance, I mentioned, Kucherov is lower on goals for per 60 minutes. Peterka's at 3.93. Kucherov is at 3.89. But then when you go over to that next column, goals allowed per 60 minutes, Peterka, 3.36. You still are scoring more goals when he's on the ice, but 3.3 is a lot when he's out there compared to, a Kucherov, who, again, it's kind of a tough comparison. I'm comparing him to one of the best winger in hockey. 2.29 for Kucherov. It's a huge margin with Kucherov, and it's a smaller one for JJ Peterka, as you might expect. So you still need a better, defensive player. But to be fair, I don't really know that it even matters. Peterka is such a valuable offensive player. He's got a spot in my lineup until he doesn't want to be here anymore, playing the way he did last season. And I'll take some of the bad in his own end, turnovers once in a while, with the good of the guy just generates offense. He can finish, and now he can play make as well. Peterka, I like the player a lot. I am not floored at the development that he's had. Remember that first rookie year, long periods of the season, he disappeared. And I thought maybe he'd be more of a, I think I once compared him to my guy Max Afinogenov as somebody that could just be a little inconsistent, where he shows up for 10 games, he disappears for 10 games, he shows up for 10 games, he disappears for 20. But, the last 2 years, and especially last year more so, a much more consistent game where on a night-to-night basis, you're getting chances created, even if the defensive game wasn't there. So great season from Peterka. He ends up with 68 points, and I would project there is another small step forward coming from him to become a point-per-game player in the NHL, and he is already almost there. Now, the one other negative of his game that needs to improve before we get to the contract and the smoke of, there were some rumors about Peterka wanting to be here, and not just from one person. Before we get to that, though, the other negative, Peterka on the power play. It's never really worked, and I can't really explain to you why that is. Maybe it's because he doesn't love a one-timer. He's pretty good at it. He scores some goals on the one-timer, but it never seems to be his favorite idea on a play. And on the power play, when you are opposite of Tage Thompson on his left side, or on the right side, he's offhand, left-handed shot, you got to be able to rip those one-timers. And again, I think he's usually pretty good at them, but those plays just always seem to go to him, and then they never really work their way elsewhere. So improving as a player on the power play. Last year, only 6 power play goals. He only has, for someone who has 67 goals in his last 3 years, for only 11 of them to be on the power play, that's a pretty low percentage for a very good offensive player. And really, until last year, he didn't even get long extended periods of time on the number one unit, because I think the coaches saw it. They thought this guy something's not clicking for him when they have the man advantage. So that is, to me, the deal with Peterka. The numbers don't really, this is where I want to present you with the numbers, because that's what my eyes tell me, is that he doesn't really seem like he gets it. To be fair, though, they do score when he's out there. And again, he's on the number one unit, so there's that. But the Sabres power play production when he was on the number one unit was actually higher than it was for almost any other player. So the numbers don't bear that out. So just keep that in mind. But there's still just something that doesn't look right for me when Peterka's on the power play. All right. When we come back, there were rumors at the trade deadline. There was a 5-minute period at the trade deadline where I thought, and we all thought, JJ Peterka was a goner. Well, is that totally unfounded? Is he looking to get out? We'll get to that and what the contract could look like coming up on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA and the NHL playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers all those highlight-worthy performances. You've had some crazy comebacks in these games. You've seen Toronto just getting destroyed, which, that's always seems to be a pretty good bet. So whether it's a game-winning shot or a game-winning goal, a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before the start of the game and live with player props, performance trends, same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And it's not just the playoffs. We've got the Preakness tomorrow, which of course is always a great event to look on these apps for. You've got, of course, you got lacrosse going on right now. You have got hockey playoffs. You've got NBA playoffs. You've got NFL futures you could start looking at. There are spreads out on week 1 games if you want to get way ahead of it. So plenty to look at. over at FanDuel Sportsbook. So right now, they are offering a $200 bonus in bets if your first $5 bet hits. So head to FanDuel.com. It's the perfect time to sign up. Place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, a game night for Rochester. We'll talk about them coming up in the next segment, down 1-0 to Laval in the second round of the AHL playoffs. We're talking JJ Peterka. So looking at his game, I'm really impressed. I think he's going to be a point-per-game player in the NHL. He's already not far off that. Is he going to do it in Buffalo? Is a legitimate question that you should be asking yourself right now. At the trade deadline, this was all disputed. And the Sabres did not move JJ Peterka at the deadline, and Kevin Adams made comments that they never really were looking at that. They never wanted to move him at all. Frank Saravelli from the Daily Faceoff, who's one of the plugged-in insiders of the league, on that night said, sounds like Peterka is getting close to getting moved to the New York Rangers. Renaud Lavoie from TVA in Montreal, one of the other big insiders in the NHL, he tweeted that night, "To indique que JJ Peterka sera exchange au New York Rangers," which if you hit translate means all indications are JJ Peterka will be traded to the New York Rangers. That was the one for me, because Renaud Lavoie he almost never gets things wrong. And really, Saravelli, not very often either. So, and I had two insiders from different publications or sites that were telling me basically the same thing. Now, I'd tell you their source was probably the same, whether that was the agent or whether that was someone that works for the Rangers. That might be more likely that someone from the Rangers was talking. But either way, somebody somewhere thought, there's one of two things happened. Somebody somewhere thought Peterka to the Rangers was done or closing in on being done. Or two, they made it up to gain leverage in something. If you believe that it was all BS, that's fine. Just tell me what the leverage gained was by somebody telling two big insiders that he was going to go to the Rangers. And I'm not telling you that that isn't out there. I just have a tough time figuring out who gains from Peterka to the Rangers. Does the Rangers gain from that? Do the Sabres gain if they're talking with another team that's the Rangers? Because that one makes sense, but I don't think the Sabres are trying to trade JJ Peterka. So I don't know. There have been rumors and smoke about Peterka and whether he wants to stay in Buffalo long term for a good amount of time now. And until he signs a 7-8 year deal, I guess I'll believe it when I see it, that he's going to sign a long-term extension with the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know that that's what he wants to do. I would hope and think the Sabres would want to do it, but even that is a bit of a question because they locked up so many players right away that maybe they're a little spooked from that and they want to wait a little bit on a player's contract, do a bridge deal. They haven't really done a bridge deal on any of these guys that have come up for contracts, and maybe they want to make Peterka the first. That's dangerous. You did that with Sam Reinhart, and it blew up in your face. So for me, that's not the smart move. I think you should forget about Samuelson's contract and Thompson's contract and Cousins' contract and all these recent examples of signing a guy early. A lot of those guys were also after 1 year. This is 2. And I wouldn't think this is the time to pick to mess around on your philosophy of signing contract extensions. This guy is good. This guy is even great. He is young. He is fast. He plays in your top 6. He stays healthy. Sign him and get him locked up on a 7-8 year deal. I don't know that you'll be able to do that because you'll have to put the ball in his court and you'll have to figure out what his motivation is. But if I were Kevin Adams, that's the deal I would be searching for, is a 7 or an 8 year deal. And if he doesn't want to do that and we have to do a bridge deal, then I try to walk him to restricted free agency again, rather than walk him to UFA status. So maybe a 2-year bridge deal to me is the most likely outcome, because the Sabres want to be good right now, and they're not going to want to trade Peterka for futures. If there's a hockey trade to be made out there, you get a player that's 4 or 5 years older and also really good, and the other team gets the younger player. Maybe that's the deal to be had. But I don't make that deal unless I know Peterka doesn't want to stay here long term, and that the best I'm ever going to do with him is a bridge deal, and I have a short-term relationship between the player and the team. I hope all this is just wrong, and Peterka would listen to this and go, I don't know where this came from. This idea that I don't want to be in Buffalo long term, I'm just going to sign a 7-year deal. To me, that's the best case scenario. But again, I'm a little skeptical that we're headed for that with him. So great player. If they do a deal, I think you're looking at like a 2-year deal worth about $14 million. $7 million per year, I think, is what you'd be looking at a bridge deal. If you could get him to do a long-term deal, you're probably in the 8s, right? The cap has gone up a little bit, a good amount actually, and 8.5 is the new 7.5. And I think that's about what Peterka would be worth at this moment in time. So I would be trying to sign him if I were the Buffalo Sabres. When we come back, what happened to the Amerks in game 1, and should we be worried at all about this series? That's coming back here on Locked On Sabres. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. It is a game night for the Amerks. They are taking on the Laval Rocket, game 2 in Rochester. So, game 1 does not go their way. And a couple of observations that I had from the game. 5-4 loss on Wednesday night before they get going here tonight, and then go back up to Quebec for games 3, 4, and 5. 4 and 5 if necessary. Let's hope at least 4 is necessary. Devon Levi gives up 5 goals. I don't think he played amazing. I think he played fine. He made some really nice saves. To me, Laval looks like a better team. And it's only one game, and the Amerks can outplay them in the rest of the series, but the Amerks got outshot 34-27. And to me, what I saw from the Amerks in this game was a couple of different times that did end up in the back of their own net, where Levi gave up a big rebound, and the Amerks panicked. And they all collapsed in around Levi, too close together, and it allowed so much space around them that every loose puck was going to the Rocket. And that was giving them second, third, sometimes fourth opportunities. And again, some of that is on Levi. Levi gave up some big, juicy rebounds. I think it was the third goal where a Laval player had a shot from the short side. Not really a dangerous play. And Levi makes the save, but the puck dribbles back out into the middle. That's a rebound you can't give up. That's a technique thing. That's you just got to play a cleaner game than that. So there weren't many moments where Levi, to me, did that. And again, that's one where you still would hope a defenseman would come in and clean it up for him, and nobody did. So you had a couple moments like that. Also, a couple of power plays, took a couple penalties, and the Rocket got some giant opportunities. Logan Mailloux from the point with a bomb of a shot, a little too close in. You had some real great chances from the Rocket. They're impressive. They're an impressive team on the overall. From the Amerks end of things, I mean, they were there. They got off to a little bit of a slow start. Michael Leone talked about that he really didn't feel like they found their game until the second period. And against this opponent, you cannot do that. It's the best team in the AHL in the regular season. You can't have a period off. They only lost period by 1. And they got their goals, right? Like Cale Clegg, man, that one-timer from the point on the power play has been one of the most consistent offensive things this whole playoff run. I've seen it like 4 times already. Consta Helenius, quick snapshot from the middle of the ice. That was an impressive goal that the Amerks scored in this one. But on the overall, it just wasn't enough against the Rockets. So, listen, to my, untrained eye on the Laval Rocket, I'm not watching their games every single night of the AHL season. Looks like a good team. It looks like a team that if the Amerks are going to win this series, they're either going to have to play 25% better, 30% better. They got to have a better first period, or they're going to need Devon Levi to kind of stand in his head. I think that might be necessary against this opponent specifically. It is probably their biggest challenge throughout the entire playoffs. If they're able to get by the Rocket, they might be the favorite to win the Calder Cup. And it might take Levi doing special things. But luckily, he is capable of that. And he's done it for the Amerks. He's done it at other levels of hockey. And I think you're going to need a big couple of games out of Devon Levi for the Amerks to get through this series. So Amerks down 1-0. It's a 7:05 puck drop on Friday tonight against the Rocket. And then 7 o'clock on Wednesday, back up in Quebec. All right, go Amerks, go Bandits. That's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll keep moving on through the roster. Some of the more interesting players from the Sabres as we look back on their seasons and we look ahead to contract dilemmas and other things. We will talk Zach Benson on our next show. Very excited to talk about Benson. He's one of my favorite players to cover, in part because it's not easy to analyze his game. The numbers are not there, but he's such an impressive player when you watch him. So Benson, we'll get to him on our next show. So come back for that. If you're looking for more playoff talk on the Leafs and other things, be sure to check out Locked On NHL Game Night. It's available wherever you listen to your podcast, including on their YouTube channel. We'll talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.